you understand it from a transcendental perspective, the claim that agnosticism, that they're withholding or suspending judgment, is about as convincing as a dude walking down the street in a tight skirt, a bad wig and lipstick, and a stuffed bra.
So I take it you don't like transgenders?
Well, I think that they're mentally and spiritually perverted. I think that they are just simply catering to their perverse fetishes, that they're fantasizing that there's something that they're not. And now they're emboldened because they are now being backed up by the news media, the entertainment industry, and one major political party in the United States. Okay? And we can all guess who that is. I mean, I mean, take a look at game shows. We now have Jeopardy featuring a guy. I mean, it's laughable. I mean, the guy doesn't even look like, I mean, it's clearly it's a dude. Okay. It's not even somebody who's had, bodily and facial surgery to make him look feminine. I mean, and they're promoting this guy as a woman. I mean, it looks like a Saturday Night Live skit. I mean, it's almost as bad as when Milton Berle as Uncle Milty would dress up in drag in his 1950s TV show. And Jeopardy is promoting this guy as a woman. He's not a woman.
Let's say they accepted that they're not going to be women. What's wrong with role playing? Like, is there anything inherently wrong with that?
Look, there are only two sexes, okay? Gender is a linguistic construct, okay? Sex is biological. Long before almost all of you were born, when I was young, when these cases started to arise, they were seen for what they were. These people had either mental or spiritual fetishes that they deluded themselves. And even the psychiatric community, of which I'm not no fan of, would reckon this as a mental aberration. But now we've gone 180 degrees, that if you disagree with their mental aberration, you're the one with the mental aberration. And now it doesn't just stop there. They want to indoctrinate little children with this as early as kindergarten. This is how depraved these people are.
Okay. What if?
Yep.
What if?
Yeah.
No.
Yeah. Do me a favor. Do me a favor. I want to hear you, but right now, whatever the situation is, your mic quality is not good.
Yeah. Sorry, now can you hear me better? It's just my mic is kind of. It's just it moves around a lot.
Yeah. As long as you can sustain it that way, yeah, then I can hear you. Go ahead.
Yeah. You can. Yeah, I'll just stay next to my mic. Okay. So what I was asking was, okay, I understand the place you're coming from of like promoting it as normal, but like, what's wrong with a man wearing heels? Like, let's say he knows that he's not a woman, but he likes the fashion, just likes the aesthetic. What's wrong with him?
If this weirdo wants to dress up like a woman, okay, fine. But if you're going to go out in public, you shouldn't be trying to pretend something that you're not. This is delusion. This is a fetish. Okay. What if I went around in a big diaper with a pacifier in my mouth? Walking around in the supermarket, and I identify as a 5-year-old or a 4-year-old, right? The reason why this is happening is because what's happening is Western civilization has been steadily rejecting the influence of Christianity over the last 100 years. ever starting with Darwin's theory of evolution. Darwin's theory of evolution started the ball, because now Darwin's achievement of evolution wasn't, quote unquote, the discovery of natural selection. The real achievement of Darwin was the removal of God from the sphere of rational discussion. Okay? You know, when the American Revolution took place, the founding fathers, God was pivotal in the argument for our disassociating ourselves from the King of England. Right? But Darwin came along and said, we don't need any stinking God. We're just evolved, less hairy, more intelligent, kind of like chimpanzees. As that spread through Western civilization and in other facets of life, this, in essence, removed God from the sphere of rational discussion, that God is real. We may we may have some arguments about God and how he wants us to worship him, but God is relegated to Christmas cards and people who want to go to church. Okay? Well, God is religion. God is not science. But guess what? Neither is science, because at the root of science are fundamental parameters that science cannot uh, demonstrate. Okay? And by the way, and science is not the same thing as naturalism. And when they talk about science, what they're really talking about is naturalism, which is an atheistic outlook. So as that spread decade by decade, as that Darwinian ideology spread in the minds of people, it infected all areas of Western culture. Okay, jurisprudence, history, you name it, and that's why we see the rise of communism. Communism came right out of an evolutionary, Darwinian, and atheistic outlook by Karl Marx, right? And so once this idea was thoroughly entrenched, then by the time of the 1960s, after the sexual revolution, then in the 70s, then the homosexuals, okay, started to become politically active.
When was Liberace around? What year was that?
Liberace was prominent in the 1950s and 60s, and lesser so into the 70s, and then I think he died in the 80s. I'm not sure about that. But even though it was clear that Liberace was a homosexual, he didn't come out and push it into people's faces, other than the fact that he was effeminate.
Now you say that it took about what 60 years for this to be normalized, coming
No,
out as far as
what I'm saying is that toward the end of the late 19th century, there were certain people who wanted to abandon a biblical worldview, such as Charles Lyell, who was the father of modern geology. He hated the biblical account of creation, and he wanted to completely undermine it. But he was a really smart guy because he was trained as a lawyer. And he wrote in his personal writings that you can't do a frontal assault on this because people will dig in their heels. They have to attack it on scientific grounds. So he helped to popularize something known as uniformitarianism, that the key to understanding the world's surface is through uniformitarianism, that the key to the past is the present, that the current slow processes that we see today happened over a long period of time. And so that certain features, mountains, geological structures, sedimentary layers, are to be understood in terms of uniformitarianism, that this is the product of very slow processes over millions, if not billions of years, as opposed to the previous prevailing view, which was catastrophism, that the major topographical features, geological features of the world were the product of catastrophe, right? And usually that would be aligned with a worldwide flood and the cataclysmic occurrences that resulted in the worldwide flood. So then Charles Lyell and some others like him no longer wanted to consider that this earth, the cosmos, was the product of God. It's just simply the product of eons of time. And then they had a big influence on Charles Darwin. Charles Darwin had a nominal belief in God. He had a nominal belief in God, in the Bible. By the time he got back from the trip from the Beagle, he no longer had a belief that the Bible was a book of history. Okay, and so he wanted to become famous. By the time he was gone, he ripped off the idea of natural selection from Charles Alfred Russell Wallace, and he pushed it off as his own. Okay, that he discovered it. Okay, he didn't discover anything. And so he didn't discover evolution by natural selection. Evolution was called transmutation. His grandfather believed in it. It was believed by the ancient Greeks. Okay, even I think it was Aristotle who made a foreshadowing statement that mimicked slightly natural selection. I can thank one of the mods here who read that to me last week. That was good. So then Charles Darwin spread a new metaphysic, a new religion, that God is not the creator of the animal kinds on this planet. It's evolution, is materialism, chance and time. Well, that's in the late 1980s. Then it starts spreading decade after decade into academia. It starts to capture the minds of people. And God is removed from the sphere of rational discussion. Okay? See, unlike the founders believed that the reason why we set up our government the way we did in a tripartite way is because they felt that the government was supposed to be a proxy for God and not violate God's principles, such as giving us life and liberty, okay, and to pursue our own interests as long as we don't undermine other people's private property rights or harm them physically. And these all come from, biblical principles. Now, that's not to say all the founding fathers were Christians, but they had a nominal kind of Christian mentality. But Darwin comes along, and that type of a Darwinian ideology erodes that previous mindset, which metastasized or snowballed over the decades. And so by the time we get to the late 19th century, we have the sexual revolution in the United States and in parts of Western civilization. Prior to that in Europe, they were abandoning belief in the Bible, attacking the historicity of the Bible. And that's why we see in some of these countries that they're largely atheistic, especially in England and some of the Scandinavian countries. Right. So it can all be traced back to Darwin's theory of evolution. It's no accident that this stuff about transgenderism and all the abortion, it can all be traced back to the influence of Charles Darwin.
Hey, Darth,